My daughter came to introduce her new husband, Tom. I waited eagerly for them and prepared dinner. Of course, I was curious to know what kind of man had captured my daughter's heart. Standing in front of the mirror and adjusting my dress, I felt a pull. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at me like that, not a girl, but not quite an old woman either. And even though I'd put on a few extra pounds, I wasn't going to flaunt it. I wasn't going to twirl my tail in front of a new acquaintance. I was just curious. What kind of man was this new son-in-law? This was my daughter's second marriage. The first, John, had turned out to be a shallow man who made no money and couldn't stand up for my daughter. Before she broke up with him, I helped her get over it. "Why do you want him?" I asked her. She hesitated and eventually divorced. Then she met Tom. One day she called me and said, "Mom, get ready, I'm bringing home a new man." I made cutlets and picked out a dress that showed off my figure. I wanted to see if he would stare, to gauge his moral strength. I wanted my daughter to know what kind of man she was dealing with. They arrived, cooing like lovebirds. Outwardly, Tom looked normal. Moderate build, tasteful clothes. He was nothing like my previous son-in-law, who always wore slouchy pants and acted like a bore around me. But Tom quickly relaxed, offering lemonade with glittering eyes. When my daughter sat next to me, he barely looked at me. But as soon as she excused herself to the kitchen, for a moment, his demeanor changed. He started looking me over from head to toe. I won't be modest. I have great legs that grow out of my ears. As soon as my daughter returned, he immediately started staring at the ceiling again. The evening continued pleasantly. The lemonade cheered everyone up. We chatted about all sorts of nonsense, and he even complimented me. Later, we ended up in the small kitchen together. I was stealing potatoes from the oven when he came to get water. There wasn't much room to maneuver, and he accidentally grazed me. I pretended to resent it, but deep down it felt good. A young, strong body was everything my daughter could have wished for. After all these years, I still enjoyed male attention. They left that evening, and my daughter called later to say that Tom was delighted with me. I couldn't help but feel proud. A few days later, there was a knock on the door. Who could it be? I opened the door and saw Tom standing there, excited and trembling. "Come in," I said, perplexed as to why he was here. He stepped inside, took off his shoes and looked at me intently. I laughed inwardly, knowing how men react to me. "Why are you here?" I asked. He swallowed hard and started hugging me right in the hallway. I barely managed to break free, and I laughed. "I don't know what came over me," he replied, stammering. "You're very alluring." "Sorry, but no," I replied, wiggling my hips and walking into the living room. He followed me, whimpering like a puppy. "What do you want?" I asked, stretching out in the chair and crossing my legs to show off my knees. His jaw dropped, and I realized I'd circled him. Tom tried to talk me into getting to know him better, but I just laughed and sent him away. He left, hurt, but I was amused by the whole situation. He came back a week later, carrying a cake, fizzy lemonade, and a rose. I smiled crookedly and invited him into the kitchen. He came back more confidently this time, clearly determined. I playfully pushed him away, calling him Maddie. He blushed and got even more flustered. I began to tease him further, letting him kiss my shoulder and then playfully slapped him. He kissed harder, leaving the mark, and I slapped him again, harder this time. I threw the rose out the window, and he watched me laugh wide-eyed. Men were so predictable, but funny at the same time. From the first time we met, I noticed how easily aroused he was. He was like a young puppy eager to please. I savored the attention, feeling alive and wanted. For half an hour I played with him, resisting the urge to go too far. Eventually I sent him on his way, satisfied that I hadn't lost my grip. As Tom walked away, I couldn't help but feel a mixed sense of amusement and satisfaction. He was like a young colt, full of energy, but easily tamed with charm and wit. My daughter picked an interesting guy this time, although I wasn't sure she realized how much of a puppy he still was. The next few days passed without incident. Life returned to its usual rhythm of cooking, cleaning, and occasional phone calls from my daughter, who seemed unaware of the little drama unfolding between her mother and her new husband. She raved about Tom, how supportive and loving he was, how he had changed her life for the better. It made me smile, knowing that despite his quirks, he genuinely cared for her. Then, one evening, there was another knock on the door. This time it wasn't Tom standing there, but my daughter Sarah. Her face flushed and her eyes were dilated with worry. "Mom," she said, Panting, Tom told me something strange happened when he visited you last week. He said things got out of control. I blinked, caught off guard. What exactly did he say? Sarah hesitated and then whispered. He said you were flirted with him. That you teased him and even slapped him. Mom, what's going on? For a moment, I thought about writing it off as a misunderstanding, but then I saw the worry in her eyes. She wasn't angry yet, but she was clearly confused and hurt. I sighed, realizing that as harmless as my little game seemed, it had crossed the line. After all, Tom was her husband, and anything that happened between us, however innocent, could jeopardize their relationship. I didn't mean to upset you, Sarah. I began slowly, choosing my words carefully. Tom came on to me a couple times, and yes, we had a few playful moments. But I never thought anything serious would come of it. You know how I am. I like to tease people, especially men. But I would never do anything to hurt you or your marriage. The expression on Sarah's face softened a little, but she still looked worried. Mom, I trust you, but Tom is different now. He's not the same as he was before he met me. He's vulnerable, and I don't want anything to change that. Can you promise me you'll keep your distance from him? I nodded, feeling a prick of guilt. Of course, Sarah. I promise. From now on, I'll keep things strictly professional between us. No more games. She smiled weakly, feeling relieved. Thank you, Mom. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, I replied, hugging her. After Sarah left, I sat in my favorite chair, reflecting on the events of the past few weeks. I had always prided myself on my ability to handle men, to keep them at a distance, and still enjoy their attention. But this time, I'd gone too far. I forgot that Tom wasn't just a man, he was my daughter's husband, and he was supposed to be faithful to her, not me. In the days that followed, I tried to avoid Tom at every opportunity. When they came to visit, I tried to be polite and brief, focusing on spending time with Sarah. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Months passed and life fell back into a regular rhythm. Sarah and Tom's relationship grew stronger and stronger, and I watched from the sidelines, happy to see my daughter happy. I caught glances from Tom from time to time, but tried not to encourage him. Gradually, the tension between us dissipated, replaced by mutual respect. One evening, as Sarah and Tom were preparing to leave after a family dinner, Sarah pulled me aside. Mom, she said quietly, I just wanted to thank you for everything. Tom told me you've been keeping your distance, and I appreciate it more than you know. I smiled, feeling a sense of pride mixed with relief. You're welcome, sweetheart. Your happiness is all that matters to me. As they drove away, I stood on the porch and watched the taillights disappear into the night. The adventure with Tom was fun while it lasted, but in the end family is what really matters, and I learned an important lesson. Sometimes it's better to let go of the past and focus on the future. With those thoughts, I turned and walked back into the house, ready to dive back into the quiet peace of my own life.